17. Maeve and I bring the basket of eggs inside. I stand, holding the basket, while she marches around the kitchen, getting a bowl, and then guiding me to the kitchen table. She climbs onto a chair, and then cracks the eggs one by one and begins to stir. Mary is by the fire, carefully pushing a covered pot into the coals, positioning it until it's surrounded by embers, but not actually touching flames. Biscuits. My stomach growls. For pretty much the entirety of my 20s, I never thought about food. I was a woman of discipline, not cravings. Now I'm constantly hungry in this world. While Maeve carries the bowl of scrambled eggs to Mary, I sit down at the kitchen table, exhausted. "We need the frying pan," Mary says to Maeve. "I'll get it." She crosses the room, throwing me a dirty look as she passes. "Well, don't you look cozy?" "What? Isn't breakfast about to start?" "Breakfast won't be for another hour." She grabs the frying pan from the counter and returns to the fireplace. "What should I do until then?" Mary looks back at me with an unnerving maturity. 15, going on 50. "You should get to work." I look around the kitchen, my gaze coming to rest upon a half-full container of flour on the kitchen shelf. "Do we need bread?" Flour, salt, water, a jar of sourdough starter. At the sight of those simple ingredients lined up in a row on the countertop, I feel an unfamiliar pressure building behind my eyes. I've never been one to cry, but right now I could. Hello, old friends. The jar of starter is surprisingly well kept. No crust around the rim, and the starter itself looks bright and airy, not the dark color of jaundice that happens with even a week of neglect. Not surprising, I suppose, given how militant Mary is with housekeeping. She must be keeping an eye on this little yeast ball, along with everything else in this house. I wouldn't be surprised if the girl does chores while the rest of us sleep. As soon as I dive my fingers into the wet jar, a calm falls over me. I scrape as much of the bubbling starter out as I can, then drop it into the bowl. I pour 3 cups of flour on top, then add a sprinkling of sea salt. Then I begin to knead, my fingers digging deep into the dough in a quick, restless pattern. The trick to baking a good loaf of bread is to build tension. You have to fold and press the dough in on itself, just enough to lock air within the layers of flour. Too much kneading and it becomes a rock. Not enough kneading and it comes out mealy. As I work the dough into a tight, springy ball, I remind myself that I am being watched. I lovingly pat the ball of dough, then place it into a bowl and spread a towel over it to let it rise, right as old Caleb steps inside and hands Mary a large steel bucket. She takes it carefully. It looks heavy as she walks over to the kitchen sink, taking care not to slosh the liquid inside. I peek into the bucket. It's raw milk. A delicacy, I used to tell my followers. A medical marvel, capable of curing any known ailment, except this bucket is smeared with cow shit. Mary takes out a gray rag and wipes down the sides of the bucket in a businesslike fashion, then takes the bucket and carefully begins pouring it into 2 pitcher-like containers. Then she turns to me. "I think we should change your dressing." I feel the blood leave my face. "No, thank you. I think I'm fine." 2 minutes later, I'm sitting in a kitchen chair, my foot in Mary's lap while she carefully unwraps the bandage, revealing something that looks more like a pickled chicken foot than any leg I've ever seen. The skin is yellow and wrinkled and streaked with dry blood, and the stitching looks like a beginner's crochet project gone awry. And, my God, the little flecks of hardened muscle that got caught on the wrong side of the seams. I cast my gaze quickly to the ceiling. Frankenstein's monster. That is what I feel like. I close my eyes as Mary begins to apply the ointment. I twitch at her touch, and she says, "Oh, stop being such a baby. Look how it's already begun to heal." No, thank you. I'm all finished with the looking part of this assignment. Instead, I keep my gaze trained on the kitchen window, which, from where I'm sitting, offers a portal into a clean square of blue sky. My foot jerks uncontrollably again. "Stop moving." I find the little microphone in my pocket and hold it tightly in my grip. "Hello, America. Are you watching me right now? Are you entertained?" 18. There comes a point in every marriage when a woman realizes that the man she married is a freak. This is inevitable. It cannot be avoided. The only real question in the matter is what type of freak your husband will be. Meaning, if you are lucky, you will find out your husband is preternaturally into vintage children's train sets, and you will not find out that your husband pays high school cheerleaders for sex. That is the best we homemakers can hope for in this life. A man whose freakishness is not unspeakably violent or technically illegal, and therefore is something we are able to bear. This is what my mother told me on our daily phone calls in those first few weeks of my time at the Mills estate, whenever I mentioned my husband's particular behaviors, his refusal to get a job, his adolescent mewlings at his parents when they were simply trying to be nice. I would tell my mother about these moments while pushing Clementine in a stroller down the long, tree-lined driveway, and she would listen patiently before reminding me that it was a woman's job to encourage her husband to be normal. The problem, Mother, I would say at this point, is that he isn't trying. Well, she would reply, I'm sure he will soon. And then the phone conversation would drift off in a quiet deflation of mutual uncertainty. I had hoped Caleb's parents would whip him into shape upon arrival, that Doug might offer some sort of ho-hum rallying cry for the tenets of traditional masculinity, or that Amelia might grab her son's wrist and squeeze tightly, telling him in as few words as possible not to embarrass the family. But so far they'd done nothing of the sort. They'd barely said anything to him at all, had only reprimanded him mildly whenever he slouched through the kitchen in sweatpants in the early afternoon. We'd been here for weeks, and nothing had improved. If anything, it had gotten worse. Caleb now spent all his time in our bedroom, the glow of his computer screen turning his face an unworldly blue while he played video games, or read niche culture blogs, or watched porn. Yes, porn. This I hadn't told my mother. One afternoon I walked into our bedroom to find Caleb's laptop open at his desk. I glanced over to our bathroom door and saw it firmly shut tight, a band of yellow light by the floor. I walked over to his desk, hoping to find the browser open to a job listing. Instead, I found a grotesque still of a couple, naked and frozen mid-thrust. Before my brain short-circuited, I noted the long line of tabs open at the top of the browser. Husband plus wife, real couple, fuck passionately for 1 whole hour. Intense kissing leads to squirting orgasm. Coof. Amateur couple have hot, intimate fuck session. Lots of pussy licking. Then I stepped forward and slammed the laptop screen shut. My wagon was hitched to a sex pervert. Then one night, the moment I was waiting and hoping and praying for finally arrived. It was evening, late October. We'd been at the Mills estate for a month. I was on my way to the laundry room when I came across Amelia and Doug sitting beneath the dim light of the island pendants, a bottle of white wine sweating on the counter between them. Doug was about to leave for a week in D.C. A black rolling suitcase lay by his feet like a family dog. His tie, lipstick red, was loose around his neck. It was a casual scene, somewhat nostalgic. Like a Norman Rockwell painting, a nightcap between a traveling salesman and his homemaker wife. But something about their expectant faces unnerved me. I hadn't expected to catch either of their gazes so quickly, nor had I expected those gazes to hold such quiet urgency. And suddenly I felt destabilized, like I was floating through the half-second when dream tips over into nightmare. The moment when you realize an intervention is taking place, and the person it's meant for is you. Natalie, Amelia said, could we chat for a moment? Of course, I said, though my heart sank. Clementine was just starting to sleep through the night, which meant that I was just starting to sleep through the night. But nothing threatened my 9 o'clock bedtime more than Amelia with a bottle of Pinot Grigio. You know how much we love having you here, Amelia said, a bit breathily. It was clearly a beginning, a first half to a sentence she'd already rehearsed in full, and yet she paused unnaturally here, like a teleprompter was frozen. She looked helplessly at Doug. Natalie, Doug said, can we have an honest conversation? He gave me a congenial, we're all friends here kind of look. Sitting there in his starched white shirt, with an American flag pin fastened neatly on the breast pocket, I could suddenly see him perfectly at a campaign stop in West Virginia, sitting down in a booth filled with coal miners, ordering a round of pints for the table, giving some hearty speech comprised entirely of 1- and 2-syllable words, closing with some rowdy punchline about God, family, and beer. "It's about Caleb," he said. "Oh?" When he told us he was engaged, Amelia added, we were so thrilled. We thought it was just the thing to help him, but it wasn't, or it didn't, I suppose. We thought a wife and a baby might make him grow up, Doug said. Help him become a man, but we were wrong. He swirled his glass around, aerating it, his eyes on me. A shriek of fear whistled through me. All this time that I'd been hoping Caleb's parents would fix their son, they were hoping the same of me, and all the time I'd been wondering why they weren't doing more. They were wondering the same of me. "We want to help you, of course," Doug said. "We're a family now." "Absolutely." Amelia reached for her glass of wine. Teamwork. She was very drunk. My spirit buckled softly. I whispered, "I don't know what to do." "Well, first things first, we've got to find Caleb a job, of course. A good, respectable job, but one he can actually handle." Doug paused meaningfully, and in the silence I considered all the jobs Doug had probably gotten for his son over the years that hadn't worked out. Business school would have been ideal, a nice little time waster, if he hadn't screwed up the interview. Interview? What interview? I bit down on my lip to keep my expression perfectly blank. I knew nothing of this business school plan. I wondered when the plan had formed and when it had fallen apart. Doug was watching me closely now, trying to see, no doubt, if I knew what he was talking about. "Well," I said finally, "it wasn't in God's plan." Amelia tipped her glass toward me in a wobbly cheers. "Amen. Always been a dreamer, our Caleb. A gentle soul. He wrote a beautiful poem about the Garden of Eden when he was in grade school. I'm sure I still have it somewhere. Do you remember that poem, Dougie? How he rhymed Eve with believe. He could be perfect for politics someday," Doug said, ignoring his wife entirely. "It's actually one of the few positions of power where it benefits you to underthink. If you don't think too hard, you never get rattled. There was that one silly little debacle with the classroom rabbit," Amelia went on, frowning mistily at no one. "But it was an accident. He didn't mean to. I imagine him as a state senator. Multiple eyewitnesses said the rabbit bit him first." I said nothing. I was having a hard time processing so much information at once. My husband, a former poet, a future politician, a convicted rabbit killer, a presently unemployable man. We'd put the right advisors around him, of course, Doug said, sensing my panic and diagnosing it incorrectly. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Right now, I think we should just get him a stable job, keep him busy and working, and then we figure out something from there. Here, Doug gave me a smile that was at once condescending and encouraging, and for a moment I felt myself in that booth again, a pair of sweating beers between us. I was a coal miner, a warehouse worker, a union man, and he was the man who would save my job, feed my family, resurrect my town. Then I blinked and remembered who I was, and the room tilted a degree. I placed a hand on the counter to steady myself. "What are you asking me to do, exactly?" "Well, Natalie, for all intents and purposes, you are the man in the family right now." Big, sharky grin. "I can get him a job, sure, but you've got to make him do it." He paused, seemed to realize only then that I was standing while they were seated. "Would you like to get comfortable?" I walked around the island and pulled out a stool, like the good little dog, wife that I was. Bark, bark. There was a vineyard down the road, apparently. Doug was good friends with the owner. There was a management position available for Caleb. Nothing special, but it would keep him busy all day long, and he would oversee the farm workers on the property. If he got a job in business someday, He could technically describe this work as management experience on a bullet point, and if he opted for a political run, he could say he had experience working alongside people from all walks of life. If he got fired, well, no one would be the wiser. As Doug went on, describing a position that basically amounted to vineyard janitor, I found myself nodding along like a bobblehead. It was the opposite of what I had hoped for, and still I heard myself say, as if Doug had popped a quarter into the back of my skull and cranked some hidden shaft, "What a perfect idea." When I came back upstairs with the laundry, Caleb was standing over the bassinet, staring down at our daughter in the darkness. I paused at the door threshold. Caleb gave me a thumbs up, still asleep, and I sighed with relief. I set down the laundry by the bed and walked over to him. "I wish there was a job for playing with babies," Caleb whispered. "I'd be great at that." I didn't say anything. The panic I'd felt earlier in the kitchen was gone now, replaced by a dull, sweet throbbing in my chest. He was good at playing with babies. He never grew bored or irritated with Clementine. He found her endlessly entertaining. In fact, that was the problem, wasn't it? He had no desire to do anything else. My husband wanted too little from his life, and me, I wanted too much. Suddenly it was so obvious. Caleb should have been born a woman, and I should have been born a man. A sad sickness turned my stomach. We were equally broken in that way. "Listen," Caleb said quietly, "I know this hasn't been easy. I just need to figure out what my purpose is, what I want to be. And I will, Natalie, I promise." I looked up at my husband in the darkness. Then a miracle took place. The beauty of his divine will broke over me. It felt like the childhood game the girls in class had played with one another, but never with me. Crack an egg on your head. Let the yolk drip down. I shivered, suddenly alive with his presence. Marrying Caleb had not been a mistake or an act of ignorance. No, quite the contrary. It had been the beginning of a divine mission. We were put on this earth to teach each other how to be, to give each other purpose. I would help Caleb become a better man, and he would help me become a better woman. Through my example, Caleb would grow stronger, more ambitious, and through his example, I'd grow softer, more loving with our children. Like a balancing of liquids, he would take and I would give until we met each other in the middle. It would be the job of a lifetime for both of us. We were a match made in hell, I mean heaven. I could see it now. I tilted my face upward toward him in the darkness, and for the first time since the baby was born, we kissed with tongue. "Make love to me," I whispered bravely. We tumbled backward into our bed and had breathless, missionary, mushy-penised sex. Afterward, in the darkness while Caleb snored beside me, I cried silent tears at the beauty of the Lord's bounty. The next day, mid-afternoon, I woke Clementine up from her nap and brought her to Caleb. "I'm busy right now," he said, holding our daughter in the air between us like she was a leaking food delivery bag. "Not for the next hour, you're not. You're taking our daughter for a walk." I stood in the doorway, waving merrily at my husband as he pushed the stroller down the driveway. When he was far enough away, I shut the door and crossed the house to Doug's study. "Tell your friend thanks, but no thanks," I said to Doug once he'd welcomed me in. "I'll find Caleb something better." "Oh? Yes, it's my job anyways. I'm his wife." Then I added, before I lost my nerve, "You're wrong about Caleb, you know. He's not a man yet, but he will be." Doug let out a bark of surprised laughter. "It kind of sounds like you're making a bet, Miss Natalie." I held out my hand. "May the best man win." 19. Well, the worst possible thing to happen has happened. Worse even than having a foot caught in a steel trap. The bread I made was bad. Actually, bad is an understatement. It was completely inedible. Hard like a rock in some places, mealy and soft in other places. No flavor whatsoever, even though I remember, sprinkling my regular amount of salt into the bowl. Mary told me to make another boule. She said it doesn't matter, that food is food, and I should get over it. And in response, I told her, at a decibel level that I really do now regret, that something is wrong, wrong, wrong. Something is terribly and utterly wrong, and really, how many times do I have to explain this to her before she understands? Then she yelled at me to go to my room until I could control my temper, and I yelled at her to leave me alone, stupid little girl, and so she screamed for me to get out of this house right now. So now I'm standing on the front porch, fighting tears, feeling sorry for myself, when suddenly the front door opens and the two girls step outside. I glance over my shoulder at them. They're wearing coats, which are worn and stained and covered in patches. Mary is fastening a hand-knitted cap on Maeve's head. Maeve says, "We're going to find flowers, Mama." I turn away to face the mountains. "We'll be back in an hour," Mary says to my back. "In the meantime, why don't you go take a nap inside?" I roll my eyes and hiss over my shoulder. "Wouldn't you like that?" Mary sighs loudly. "Come on, Mavie." I stare firmly out at the mountains, listening to the tip-tap of their footsteps down the stairs. Maeve's chattering voice carries them farther and farther away. I turn around right as their figures are disappearing over the nearest hillside. It's quiet now, except for the occasional clanging from the barn. The boys and old Caleb have been in there all morning. I cast my gaze beyond the barn. Even the farm animals seem distracted today. The chickens are huddled quietly in one corner of the coop, all staring blankly in one direction. The horse is walking slowly away from me, up the shadowy hillside toward the sliver of sunlit paddock. The air is brisk, but there's no breeze. The sun is still rising. Go, run, now. I stare at the fields, considering this intrusive thought. I wonder where it comes from, if the voice in my head that is telling me to run is the Lord, or my gut instinct, or a byproduct of an undiagnosed concussion. It's foolish anyways. A terrible idea. I've tried it twice now and received a beating for it both times. And besides, running is no longer an option. The best I can manage is a slow crawl. No reason to try to escape right now, I think, leaning on my walking stick. Might as well just stay here. I rock back and forth on my one good heel. Yes, I should stay here. That's what a good Christian woman would do. Bake another loaf of bread, and then maybe wash the floors, and then start preparation for dinner, and then scatter more feed across the coop, and then check the chickens' feet and feathers for any sort of disease, and then ask them if they're bored, and then give the cow a bubble bath, and then... Wait, I suppose. That's what I'm meant to do. Wait here on this porch, day in and day out, until someone or something saves me. And yet, at this very moment, I feel my mind repelling itself from the house, pushing me backward like a magnet with incompatible charge. No need to run away, but I could always go for a walk, couldn't I? I limp down the front porch stairs. This time my pace is calm, my walking deliberate, the kind of movement that doesn't trip a single sensor. Right down the road, too, none of that nonsense of darting into the woods and getting shot down like some moronic woodland creature. No, I am a human, and humans are meant to walk down roads, and so I am walking when a voice stops me from the barn. "Where you going?" I freeze, turn slowly to see one of the boys, standing at the barn entrance. Noah. Nowhere. I glance down the road, gesture merrily with my walking stick at nothing. I thought I'd get some fresh air. Noah peers down the road. I know that look of consideration on a little boy's face. He's considering the merits of such an adventure. "Can I come?" "Of course," I say, though my heart sinks. I don't have a plan. Clearly, I don't have a plan. I'm a one-legged woman with an 8-year-old sidekick, walking at about a mile-an-hour pace. Regardless, we walk along the path together for several minutes. I don't say anything to Noah, and he doesn't say anything to me. This doesn't surprise me. My Samuel and Stetson are just the same. Or just the same. Are just the same. I send a little prayer to the Lord for my boys right as Noah starts to whistle. He doesn't seem to mind walking at this pace. He's holding a long stick, waving it in the air occasionally, but mostly dragging it through the dirt behind us, while I limp steadily forward. At one point, I glance back at the house to see how far we've gone, and I notice a long, shaky line in the ground, as if the boy is carrying a tether to the farm, slowly unspooling it while we walk. Soon we're at the base of the hill, beneath the trees. This is the farthest I've been from the house. Noah's whistle slowly peters away. He gazes around with interest. A strange thought occurs to me. Is this the farthest he has ever been from the house too? Or is he acting, trying to fool me? Do you come here with Pa? I say, as calmly as I can manage. Down this road, toward the highway. Highway, he repeats, frowning. Then he looks up at me and nods quickly. Of course. He's lying. A shot of adrenaline rolls through me. What else do you do with Pa these days? Lots of stuff. Lots of stuff like what? All the manly chores, fence work and wood chopping and stall mucking and the like. I'm growing up, you know. I'll be a man soon. I glance at his tiny little arms. Chopping wood? Well, he shrugs abashedly. I guess I mostly watch that. But I'm in charge of the horse, completely. I brush him and shave his hooves and keep him in good health. What's his name? Whose name? The horse. He snorts. Horses don't have names, Mama. Don't be silly. Ah, I say after a moment. Of course. Silly me. Very silly, Noah says happily. But yes, the horse is my job, and it's a very big job if you really think about it. I have to feed him twice a day, and check him for scratches or injuries, and keep him occupied so that he doesn't chew on the fence on account of boredom. What about Abel? Abel's better at chopping wood than me, he admits. Pa says Abel's almost old enough to go out with him into the far woods. 13 is when it happens. I can't go yet, 'cause I'm not old enough. Where will they go? He shrugs. Everywhere. All over the place. All over the place, like where? Suddenly my ears ring with silence, the sudden absence of sound, like a radio has been turned off. I turn around and see Noah standing 10 feet back, stick paused in the dirt. The spool, apparently, has run out of thread. We can't go any farther, he says. Why not? I laugh lightly, a flimsy trinkle of sound. He stares past me at the road beyond. There's evil out there, he says, with the uncanny calmness of a child who barely understands what they're saying. Wolves and Indians and other souls who are bent on our spiritual destruction. A breeze rolls through. The leaves whisper overhead. I am staring at this boy, and I am thinking that the evil out there is surely no match for the evil right here, standing in front of me, claiming to be my child. I'm your mother, and I am telling you it's fine, I say. So come on now, let's go. Noah doesn't move, just looks at me with a face of plain skepticism. It'll be fun, I cajole, an adventure. Nothing. Come, I snap. Come here. No, he shouts. He drops the stick and runs back up the road toward the house. I let out a wail as he sprints away, his boots kicking up little plumes of dirt along the path. He's up the hill, and then at the top of the hill, and then he disappears into the barn. 1, 2, 3. Old Caleb comes crashing out. Run! I don't, because I know it's a glitch of a command, a neural instinct that no longer applies to my current situation. I cannot run. I cannot hide. And so I just stand there, leaning on my walking stick, practically humming with fear and sadness and fury, while my husband barrels toward me, his own face twisted with fury. There's nothing to be ashamed of, I tell myself. You're only going on a walk. Do not apologize for going on a walk. And yet, right as he reaches me, a different kind of instinct takes hold. I drop my walking stick and fall to my knees, fingers clasped in prayer. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I cry to his bloody, dirt-smeared boots. Forgive me, dear husband, and deliver me from evil. 20. Dawn. Wake to whiny snuffling. Fumble through the darkness until fingers wrap around cool wooden edge of crib. Change diaper. Breastfeed, breastfeed, breastfeed. Rock, rock, rock. Put baby back to sleep. Walk past snoring husband to guest bedroom down the hall. Turn on light. Sit down at desk. Open laptop. And click on file labeled Caleb_resume. Tweak, tweak, tweak. Fudge, fudge, fudge. 3.4 GPA. Previously rounded up from 3.3. Now rounded farther up to 3.5. Submit resume to at least 5 job openings, optimizing for respectable but relatively unchallenging work. Look out the window. Watch the sunrise. Pray. Morning. Walk downstairs to find Maria's daily cappuccino waiting in the empty kitchen. Pick up mug right as baby starts to wail. Swallow the cappuccino whole in 3 scalding gulps and return upstairs. Change baby's diaper. Breastfeed, breastfeed, breastfeed. Wonder why the baby drinks milk so slowly. Chastise self for thinking ill of his creation. Walk past still snoring husband with baby. Set baby down on the bathroom floor. Then reach for toothbrush. Brush teeth while the baby runs her fingers around an outlet. Chastise the baby. Pick baby up and walk downstairs, waving to in-laws in the kitchen. Strap baby into stroller. Walk down the long driveway. Wave hello to the vineyard workers, already sweating and scattered throughout the fields. Hello, hello, hello. Oopsies. Hola, hola, hola. Pause the stroller occasionally so baby can say hola too. Thank the Lord for a beautiful day. Ask the Lord if he could please wake up snoring husband by the time the walk is over. Pray. Afternoon. Spend nap time scrolling through job posting sites and highlighting potential listings for tomorrow's 5 required applications. Keep face blank when husband ambles past. Make comment of support when he mentions going on a jog or applying to some jobs or looking at the jobs you've sent over, even though you know he will do none of these things. Pray. Evening. Wake baby from nap. Change diaper. Breastfeed, breastfeed, breastfeed. Close eyes and count to 10 over the sound of baby's sudden, inexplicable wails. Swallow very strong instinct to slap the baby. Ask the baby in a cooing murmur what she wants. What do you want? Rock baby. Breastfeed baby. Consider shaking baby. Resist urge to shake baby. Strap baby to chest. Help mother-in-law with dinner. Steak or chicken or pork chops. Biscuits or sliced sourdough loaf or cornbread. Asparagus or broccolini. Hold hands. Pray. Spoon peach mush into baby's mouth while father-in-law considers aloud, for the 1,000,000th time, a presidential run. Agree with mother-in-law when she says her line about him being the right man for the moment. Agree with father-in-law when he says his line about the need to return to traditional family values. Agree with husband when he says his line about the chicken being cooked perfectly. Give all the credit to your mother-in-law, even though she is riding high on a pharmaceutical steed and almost loaded the chicken into the oven when it was fully frozen. Smile, 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 smile. Pray. The days passed, but just barely, like a deck of trick cards. So little variation. One night, I was standing in the kitchen, swaying back and forth to keep Clementine asleep in the carrier, watching Amelia drown some stalks of broccolini in olive oil, when she set down the bottle and said, "You look tired." I didn't know what to say. I was tired. Of course I was tired. But Amelia and I did not share vulnerabilities with each other. I wasn't even aware she had intimacies to provide. She was like a porcelain doll, that woman. If there were 2 kinds of Christian housewives, then my mother was the first kind, the kind who spends her whole life pursuing a work ethic so breathtakingly valiant in its refusal to account for basic necessities like sleep that mere secular mortals could only shake their heads and mutter some needlepoint idiom about these women finding hidden hours of the day. And Amelia was the second kind, the kind who floated through the dreary tapestry of domesticity via a steady cocktail of Chardonnay, Pays Catuais in Killers, and practiced ambivalence. This, too, was hard work, but of a different sort. Nothing rattled Amelia, not her useless son, nor her power-hungry husband. I'd been living with her for the better part of a year, and I hadn't seen so much as a shudder of pain or pleasure cross her painted smile, which is why it was so unnerving to bear witness to her first genuine expression of concern, and to realize that the subject of concern was me. "Really, honey, you look a bit gray. Are you feeling all right?" "I'm fine." I tried to smile and found that I couldn't. The bridge of my lips was frozen in place. "What's wrong? Isn't Clementine sleeping through the night?" Amelia clucked disapprovingly. "If she's not, honey, she should be. She's not a newborn anymore." I paused, looked down at Clementine's large, fuzzy head. Funny, I hadn't even taken a moment to think about it, but it was true. She wasn't a newborn anymore. She was 7 months old now, crawling and making noises and, yes, sleeping through the night. Things should have gotten easier by now, I thought with surprise. I should be thinking about having another baby soon. "You know," Amelia said, "sometimes when I'm feeling really tired, I throw on the brightest shade of lipstick I've got." Her lipstick today was an almost neon floral red. Now that I was really looking at her face, she did look exhausted. "Do you want me to watch Clementine while you take a shower?" "I'm okay." Yesterday morning, I thought vaguely. I showered then, or maybe the day before that. "Honey," I insist. She beckoned again, her smiling growing wider. In fact, I won't take no for an answer. I reluctantly left Clementine in the kitchen with Amelia and went upstairs to our bathroom, where I found a little collection of gifts waiting for me on the sink countertop: a blow dryer, a curling iron, and 4 tubes of lipstick, plus a sticky note with a scrawled cursive message pressed to the mirror at eye level. "Take your time, Mama." What an elegant little ambush. Amelia might as well have scrawled the true meaning in all caps lipstick across the mirror. "Pull yourself together, you selfish little freak." Then I noticed the little white pill placed next to the lipstick tubes. I felt a sudden thrashing desperation to hear my mother's voice. I pulled out my cell phone and called home. She answered on the second ring. "How's my natty girl?" "Mama," I said, then paused. What was I thinking? I couldn't tell her what happened. She would be horrified to learn that her daughter let it get this bad in front of such a well-standing family. The very thought of her daughter standing in the kitchen of a senator's house in sweatpants with greasy hair would give her a heart attack. "Can I ask you a question?" There was the sound of water sloshing. I could see her perfectly, standing in our kitchen, ear pressed to her shoulder to keep the phone in place while she scrubbed the dishes. "Ask me anything, sweetheart." I sat down on the closed toilet, buried my head in my free hand. "How were you always so good at everything?" She laughed. "Honey, I don't think anyone ever accused me of being good at everything before. I just mean the little things. The house was always clean. You always got dressed and put makeup on. We always had outfits planned for us. How did you do all that, on top of your job and the knitting?" Well, the water sloshed in the silence. "You know, I don't know if I ever really thought about this, Natty, but do you know what trick I used to do once your father had passed on, God rest his soul?" It still amazed me how easily she referenced his passing. She really had convinced herself he was dead. Whenever I was reaching my wit's end, I would pause for a moment and, "Do you know what I would do?" Her voice lowered to a conspiratorial register. "I would imagine I was being watched." I opened my eyes and frowned at the tiles on the bathroom floor. Watched? It's lonely, you know. Housework. But it felt a bit less lonely when I pretended I had a little audience sitting on the couch with me, watching me vacuum or take out the trash, cheering me on. I didn't say anything. I felt suddenly nauseous. So that was the secret. All those years I'd spent watching my mother and the other women in our community, marveling at how effortlessly they performed their roles as mother, homemaker, wife. All the moments I'd thought of them at college, summoning their easy joy and holding it in my hand like a lucky rabbit's foot, while the girls in the dorm complained about everything. It was a lie, wasn't it? If not an outright lie, then certainly not the full truth either. They weren't actually happy. They were just pretending that they were. And the Lord is fine with this, with you needing to pretend? My mother didn't skip a beat. She'd locked into her argument and was on a roll now. Oh, I wouldn't call it pretending. It's more like a form of remembering, don't you think? After all, who do you think encouraged me to come up with that little idea to begin with? Who is our Lord and Savior, if not the original audience member for our lives? Huh, I said. I couldn't argue with that. I said goodbye to my mother, hung up the phone, and stared at myself in the mirror. Tried to imagine a small group of women standing in the corner of the bathroom, watching me, holding little score sheets, stern-faced and masquerade, like an Olympic judging panel. I hesitated, then picked up the pill and dropped it into the toilet. There it was, undeniably, the sudden swell of applause. Middle of the night. Wake up, shower, wash and condition hair, exfoliate, shave, blow-dry hair, curl hair, layer creams and pigments onto skin, foundation, blush, eyelash curler, mascara, brow liner. As your mother-in-law would say, the bare minimum. While the sun rises outside, stare at reflection in the bathroom mirror, inspecting for flaws. Practice saying, it's nothing. Practice saying, I just like starting my day with a little bit of me time. Swallow the rising misery and throat. Swallow the fury. Swallow the anxiety. Swallow the desire to light the house on fire and walk out the front door while husband, baby, and in-laws burn to death. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Kill yourself. No, conjure the audience. Conjure Jesus. Conjure Mother. Conjure Rena. Yes, that's the ticket. Rena back east, pulling an all-nighter in a corner cubicle in the basement library of school, slouched before a beam of artificial light, eating some tasteless protein bar so filled with chemicals it could survive a nuclear holocaust. Watch her as she pauses, gets the sense prickling on the back of her neck that she's being watched. She looks up and scans the room. Her gaze lands on you. Oh, the baby's crying. Go get your baby. Rena disappeared from the bathroom, leaving me alone with my reflection, which grinned sharply back at me. The days passed more quickly after that. And then one afternoon, Amelia pulled me aside in the hallway to compliment my fresh new look. I was like a brand new woman, she said, her eyes wide with approval. She stepped closer to me, close enough for me to smell the Chardonnay on her breath, as she said, "Work like a charm, don't they?" "What do?" "Oh, you know." She winked, or tried to wink. Her facial expressions seemed to suffer from an extended stutter step of removal from her nerve signals. The result was that one eyelid closed very slowly and reopened, giving the effect of a malfunctioning animatronic doll. She leaned in and whispered, "Do you know what they called them in my day?" I shrugged helplessly. Mother's little helper. The awareness dawned uncomfortably on me. It had been weeks since she gave me that one pill. Did she honestly think, through some deranged thread of Pinot Grigio-soaked dream logic, that a single dose had kept me going for weeks? "I'll get you a prescription," she slurred. "I have a doctor friend." "A friend who's a doctor?" "Oh," I said quickly, "I don't want to put you out." "Oh, honey, I get them in bulk. And anyways, what do you think family is for?" Then she stepped forward and gave me a strange, drapey hug. Standing there with her arms wrapped around me, I felt like I was in the embrace of a great stiff-winged bird, feathers fluttering with wind. No, not feathers, not wind. But then what was that shuddering movement? I stiffened, and the arms wrapped tighter. She was sobbing, I realized, sobbing hard into my neck, mumbling something that sounded like, "Help." "Amelia," I said with shock. "Oh, there." Just as quickly she stepped back, and I swallowed a gasp. Her eyes were bloodshot and raccoon-rimmed with mascara, and she was smiling fiercely, even though she had started to hiccup a bit from the force of her sobs. "Oh, don't pay attention to me. Hiccup. I'm just happy for you, that's all." "Amelia." "Call me Mama," she hissed, smiling wider. She gave my shoulder one last rub, emitting a gleeful little sob, and then said, "I'm going to freshen up before dinner." Then she loped meanderingly down the hallway and turned into the master bedroom. the door shutting behind her with a click. 21. I'm officially on house arrest. A humiliating blow to the last remaining ounce of dignity, not to mention mobility, that I had in this horror show of a world. A fabric rope made of 3 ragged towels is tied in an infinity loop around my ankles, right above my bandage, making it just barely possible for me to shuffle around the kitchen at a glacial pace. Even at a creep, it's hard to keep my balance, even harder to use my walking stick properly, and so I keep nearly falling over or gasping at the pain of my bandage rubbing against the fabric as I follow Mary's commands. Bring me the potato basket. Go get the sharper knife. Carry this crock to the fire. Sweep up the crumbs from the floor. I can't help but notice that she's intentionally making me do as many trips back and forth to the kitchen as possible. I can't help but think she's desperate to see me trip and fall flat on my face. You know, I say, on my 10th crawl toward the fire to retrieve a spoon that she magically forgot to ask for when I was there earlier to drop off the crock pot of venison stew, that your life would be much easier if you were just doing this without me. You know that, right? Of course I do. But Papa said. I roll my eyes and grab the spoon, then begin my pilgrimage back across the room. Papa sure did say. In fact, Papa said specifically, if you cause another problem, if you try to leave this ranch, or even worse, try to take a child with you, I'll tie you up by the horse and see how you do overnight, you exhausting wretch of a woman. I hand her the spoon. I can barely walk as it is, you know. Don't you think this is a bit unnecessary? This morning, I would have agreed with you, she says breezily, and then you tried to run away on one leg. She reaches for a covered bowl of milk that has been sitting on the counter by the window since morning. She takes the cover off and begins to skim the cream off the top and into another bowl. Butter. She's making butter. As she takes the bowl of cream and pours it into an old wooden churner, I think of my electric mixer and feel a rush of yearning. Afternoon, y'all. Today we're making butter from scratch. Well, except for the fact that we're using my good old KitchenAid to do the churning part. Otherwise, we'd be at it all day, and no one wants that. Ha ha, ha, ha ha ha. Mary starts to churn, working the cream with the wooden ladle in effortful thrusts, putting her shoulder into the movement. Over the steady clunking, she says, "Why do you try to run away so much?" She isn't looking at me, which is perhaps why I'm able to tell the truth. Or maybe I'm just exhausted to the point of being incapable of thinking strategically. Or maybe I am a lunatic, stuck in a nightmare, and there is nothing left to lose. Or maybe I am dreaming. Or maybe this whole world is going to shit and I am a victim of my own motherfucking, because I'm not supposed to be here. That's why. She pauses mid-churn, looks at me. You're not supposed to be here. No, I'm not. You are not supposed to be here. No. Where are you supposed to be if not here? I gesture helplessly at nothing. I'm supposed to be here, but here should be different. But this is what is here. What else could be here if not this? Who could be here if not us? I feel like I'm frozen in the pages of a children's nursery rhyme. I am here, I am there, I am miserable everywhere. Forget it, I say. Mary gives me a chiding look. Really, the way you let your mind run wild with fiction. No wonder you're so exhausted all the time. She begins to churn again. Anyways, you know not to go to the woods. There are all manner of terrible things in there. Wolves and Indians and other souls who are bent on our spiritual destruction. I mutter sniffily. Yeah, I know. Mary stiffens. The churning increases in speed. You know, there are people in the world who don't have a family at all. And how would you like that? Being all alone in the woods? No one to save you when you stumble into a trap? A gust of anger whips through me, strong enough to snap a neck. You are not my family. Mary freezes. The room falls silent. Go get more firewood, she says quietly, and I'm suddenly transported back to my real house, my real life, as I say to Clementine. Go tell Nanny Louise to check the forecast. the kind of meaningless command designed to remind someone who's in charge, designed also to give you a moment to collect your shaking breath. Mary doesn't speak to me for the rest of the night. At dinner, though, she does hand me a piece of bread slathered in fresh butter. A peace offering. This world, I realize, is full of them. Or rather, the girl holding the buttered bread is. She stares at me, palm extended. The butter is delicious. 22. One Saturday morning, Caleb burst into our bedroom and said triumphantly, "I've found my purpose." It was winter time. The holidays had come and gone. Caleb's brothers and their families had descended upon the estate for Christmas and New Year's. The veritable flock of Mill's children dragging mud through the hallways, the brothers sharing raunchy jokes in Doug's office, the women smiling mildly at one another over champagne flutes in the kitchen. And then they had all gone again, returning to their lives in San Francisco and Manhattan and D.C. And still, Caleb and I remained here. Now it was January, which meant Rena was back in Boston in her off-campus apartment. At this very moment, she was probably still in bed, perhaps just waking up now, leaning halfway over the mattress, fingers dragging groggily past empty red Solo cups on the floor, searching for a half-drunk bottle of Gatorade or a Tylenol bottle to soothe her pounding headache. I, on the other hand, was at the changing station, moving through the fourth diaper blowout of the week. My fingernails were dark with shit. I had a deranged expression on my face, something between a grin and a grimace. "Pretend you're being watched," my mother whispered in my mind, an especially easy task at the current moment, since Clementine was lying on her back, actively glaring at me while I pulled out the fifth baby wipe. "Hold on," I sang softly. "That's it, almost finished." I glanced over my shoulder, only just processing my husband's entry into the room. "Your purpose?" I tossed the final wipe to the side and began fastening Clementine into a new diaper. I resisted the urge to reply in sing-song. "Did you finally check the couch cushions? Remember when we drove past my old school the other week?" "Uh-huh." Clementine let out a warning shriek, and I moved more quickly with the diaper straps. "Well, I stopped by the other day, just to say hi to everyone." That's my husband, I thought merrily, saying hello to everyone at a private school in the middle of nowhere, not a concern in the world, while his wife uses her last 5 brain cells to power wash a baby's butt crack, and they need a substitute kindergarten teacher this spring. The current teacher is on maternity leave, and they love to find teachers who are alums. Perfect timing, don't you think? I fastened the snaps on the diaper and picked Clementine up, then turned to face him. "What about that is perfect?" "They need someone to fill the position. I need a job." He held his 2 palms up in the air, weighing them equally, like a math equation had been solved. I sat down on the bed, letting Clementine crawl onto the comforter and into Caleb's arms. "You're saying you want to replace her. Don't you remember our conversation a few weeks ago? How I said I wished I could play with kids for a job. A kindergarten teacher. My husband wanted to be a kindergarten teacher. My first thought, I had never met a kindergarten teacher who wasn't a 60-year-old woman. Then the second thought arrived. What's the salary? I didn't ask. He didn't ask. Of course he didn't ask. I didn't know you wanted to be a teacher. I didn't either, but now that I think about it, I think I'd be good at it. A pit formed in my stomach. He would be good at it. He'd be incredible. He would probably love spending all day with children, teaching them all the benign bits of information about the world that any idiot adult could master. Blue is a primary color. Fish have gills. If he started this job, he would want to do it for the rest of his life, and the dream of a respectable life would be over. We would be consigned to life as a kindergarten family. Dimly, I registered that there was some poetic justice to the phrase. We were a couple with a diagnosis so serious it bordered on medical. Failure to launch. I watched as Caleb played patty cake with Clementine's feet. She let out a gurgle of laughter, the kind she never did with me, and my chest constricted. A sad, quiet thought. None of this had gone the way I thought it would. I looked at my husband, who was now making goo-goo faces at our daughter. Do you even know what they teach children in school, Caleb? What? They teach them that being a Christian is a terrible thing, that gender is a construct, and that marriage is some destructive force. Do you want that for our kids? Of course not, Caleb said. He frowned. Do they really teach that these days? I nodded somberly. They teach little white children to feel guilty about the fact that our country used to have slaves. My public school hadn't taught this, but I'd heard of other schools that had. Or rather, my mother had heard about it from another woman at a church bake sale, who had heard about it from her sister's best friend, who was a principal at an afflicted middle school in California, or Maryland, or Canada. My mother, or the woman, or her sister, could never quite remember where, but that ended centuries ago. It doesn't matter. They don't care about facts. Well, I'm sure they don't teach that in kindergarten. It's a job for a woman, I nearly snapped. Instead, I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly, thinking. I suppose that's true. I just worry that you're selling yourself short on something more intellectually rigorous. He didn't answer. He was counting Clementine's little toes, and she was making little shrieks of delight. Time to switch tactics. You know, I had an interesting conversation with my mother the other day, I said. She told me about how sometimes, when she has to do something she doesn't want to do, she imagines that she's doing it for an audience. An audience, he snorted. That's funny. He made a face at Clementine. Isn't that funny? Yes, an audience. Like if you took a job as a financial analyst, maybe you would imagine a bunch of smart, admirable men watching you, almost like a game. Caleb frowned. Are they real people in this audience, or are they angels? I'm imagining angels, like of God. I could feel my smile straining on my face, the stitches threatening to snap. The point is, sometimes you have to pretend to like something at first, and if you pretend for long enough, you might just end up liking it. You mean pretend to like one of those jobs you send me every day? Exactly. Yes, but I know I wouldn't like that. He gave me a meaningful look. You know what I would like? Being a kindergarten teacher. He raised his eyebrows at Clementine like, checkmate, Daddy won. What had I been thinking? The strategy worked only if opting out was not an option. But for Caleb, it was always an option. In every single waking second of his life, he had the opportunity to say, simply, I don't want to do that. Imagine if I said that. Imagine if Clementine started crying and I rolled over in bed and said, I don't want to do that. Breastfeeding, I don't want to do that. Scrubbing Caleb's little flecks of calcified shit from the toilet bowl in the guest bathroom, even though there were housekeepers here, because my mother had always taught me that what your family does in the bathroom is no one else's business but your own. Nope, don't want to do that. Well, I said shrilly, you shouldn't do things you don't want to do. I felt like my brain was going to melt into a pool of liquid and drain out of my nose. Exactly, Caleb said. He looked relieved and victorious. His wife had actually started making some sense. So I'll call the school in the morning and we can... Hold on. I pressed a hand to my forehead, which felt like it was overheating. Just hold on a second. This was the longest conversation we'd had in months. My mind stretched and contorted in little panicky grabs at a plan, a strategy, anything to stop him from taking that position. Being a kindergarten teacher cannot be the only thing that you would have fun doing. Think, Caleb, think. What did you want to be when you were younger? He scrunched up his face. I don't know, he said. I don't think I ever had a clear idea of it. I mean, when I was little, I wanted to be an actor or a cowboy, but that was just kid stuff. A cowboy or an actor. Lord, give me strength. The options were so absurd as to render me without any clear opinions to begin with. It would be years before this moment made sense to me in any intellectual sense. Specifically, it would be just under a decade from now, at the campaign stop in Iowa where Doug would announce his third presidential bid, when the introducer would describe my father-in-law as the last living John Wayne, and I would turn to look at my husband and see the light in his eyes, and the memory of this conversation would click into place. Caleb didn't want to be an actor or a cowboy. He wanted to be his father, an icon, a true American patriarch. Men and their legends. Embarrassing. Well, I thought. Here we are at the end of the road. Kindergarten teacher, actor, or cowboy. Pick your poison. Drink it quickly. Then I looked at my husband and remembered our first date, his misty eyes at the idea of a farm. What you said sounds nice. Over the last few months, Caleb had mentioned the idea in passing several times, talking wistfully about growing our own crops, taking care of our own livestock. I hadn't even remotely entertained it as a possibility, but now I felt the weight of the idea drop into my lap. The Lord might not have given me a mother's instinct, as I'd been praying to receive for months, but he had given me something even better, a plan to make the father of my child a man. A substitute kindergarten teaching job was the professional version of a fully flaccid penis, humiliation incarnate, but a real-life cowboy. That, I thought with surprise, I can work with. Caleb didn't have to be good at farming. He didn't need a strong work ethic, or even a working knowledge of how to keep farm animals alive. He just had to learn how to pretend. A chorus of angels sang hallelujah in my mind.